Let's see here. So guys, sorry about that. So yeah, hey, thank you for joining the SQL Server user group. We kind of changed everything a little bit. So this is our second monthly meeting for 2021. And it's a little bit of a change from last year where you were trying to respond to COVID. So we met virtually every Friday, I believe, for about 20 Fridays, I think. And then did 3 or 4 conferences. So the pace has changed a little bit, but that's okay. We're still going to learn and delve into our professional development. So anyway, I'm Tim McAliley. I'm a Microsoft Senior Cloud Solution Architect. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some past chapter updates. I don't even know what you call it past anymore, but we're going to talk about chapter updates, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Azure Purview, which is our data governance, data classification system. There's the agenda for today. Probably about less than 10 minutes on the updates. Just some updates. I'm sure, I guess some of you might have seen it, but I've got an email from Redgate, not to me, but the email came out to the community, and it talked about how they were going to take over some of the passes duties, but really nothing specific. Like, are they going to maintain the naming scheme for pass, or are they going to take over the SQL Saturdays or the summits? Nothing firm on that yet. They did unlock content that had been previously locked up because there was a end of 2019, sometime in 2020, Pass had a Pass Pro level, like a paid membership to Pass. Membership to Pass was free, but as far as the Pass Pro membership, it gave you access to some educational videos. They've unlocked that and stored them on Redgate at Redgate University, and there's an educational series you can look up. Also, they've uploaded a lot more of their content out there to YouTube. So there's previous Pass Summit content on a Pass TV channel for YouTube, and more being added every day. What's nice is that the accounts and naming conventions and things like that for a lot of the resources don't look like they've changed too much. I don't know if we'll see the Pass website revived again, to be honest with you. Pass is still collecting community feedback. Primarily if you go to their community page and then put comments in on the forum, or if you hit Redgate up via Twitter, they suggested that in the email is the best way for them to collect feedback. There's no real word about Pass Summit or SQL Saturday, although I did see this, which was it was a website about, I typed in SQL Saturday and I typed in Pass, and it said, hey, are you looking for Pass for SQL Saturday? So someone's really they've got control of the DNS records for the SQL Saturday. Oops, do you have a question, or do you want to maybe mute? It makes it tough to, if you hear like a rattling or an echo sound and it's not coming from you, it's kind of frustrating. Anyway, if you go into Pass or go into SQL Saturday and this site comes up, it's because Redgate has gotten hold of the Pass former assets, including those URLs. And so they're trying to figure out what to do with all that content. I don't know if they'll stand the sites up as they were or create something new. My guess is creating something new, but you probably want to stay away from, Redgate SQL Saturday, or even Microsoft SQL Saturday, as far as having too much of a vendor footprint on the naming convention of the event. Although these events, if you've been to Pass Summit or you've been to SQL Saturdays, there's vendors everywhere, vendor sponsors, vendor speakers, vendor pavilions. It's a very vendor driven event. So there's really no new word on what's going to happen to the communities. Now, another thing I'll show you is that our community, our NovaSQL meetup, is associated with um, a larger national um, uh, association. Not really even associated. Here's the meetup page, and if you see right here, part of Azure Tech Group. So that's that number 82. That's 82 other tech groups that are associated underneath Azure Data Tech Groups. There was about 60 plus a couple of weeks ago. But what this means for me is that Microsoft picks up the tab for the meetup fee, because meetup charges about 80 bucks, 80, 90 bucks a year for having a meetup. If you've got over a certain amount of members, or if you do something, I don't know what the threshold is, but it's members or number of meetup events, and then it'll start to charge you. So that's fine. So they'll pick up the tab for that. And other than that, there's no, I mean, where it says part of Azure Data Tech Groups, we don't have any coordination. There's no, no, I didn't have to make anybody administrator of this site or anything like that. So we'll see what this is. We'll see what this is like going forward. Any questions or comments about the future of pass updates, chapter updates? Okay.
Yeah, actually, my name is Eddie. See if anybody have information about the pass submit, about the credit. You know, like I have paid for the pass submit, and anybody heard about who's taking over the credit of that?
You're talking about getting a refund for paying for Pass Summit?
Yeah, either refund or credit for future pass summit if that still exists.
I don't know about that. They didn't end on a good financial note, the Pass management team. So I'm not being glum, but I'd be worried about the status of a refund if that's what you're waiting on, to be honest. And I don't know who to contact because they've disbanded. And their emails that you use to reach them are now not valid, at pass.com or whatever. So they went poof. Anybody else now? Yeah, that's a rough one. That's a rough one, Eddie. I know it sucks. Trust me. All righty. So for our own monthly meetups, now that's what we can control. We can control meetups and conferences that we do. And of course, so on the last Friday of each month, like today, like last January, and all the way through October 29th, we'll have an hour-long monthly meetup, and we'll talk about different things. If there is a topic that you want to bring up, if you want to speak, let me know. Not a big deal. This meeting and the next couple of meetings, and then we also have a speaker for September from Germany to talk about some in-memory technologies. But hey, if you want to speak, and we've got slots, it's this right here. It's 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, last Friday of the month, and and we can get you set up. I need your session title, session bio. You don't even have to give me your LinkedIn, or you don't have to give me your full bio. Just send me your LinkedIn profile, but something to let people know so they can click on it and check you out to see what you do and what you're about. So today we're going to talk about unified data governance services through Azure Purview. Next month, my good buddy Mike Ray from Redmond, Washington, he works for the SQL Server product group in content services. So he does documentation. But as part of that, you have to experiment with a lot of things and spin up resources and test them out. He's going to talk about Azure Arc-enabled data services. And then on Friday, April 30th, we're going to do kind of a one from, we did this last year, but we're going to do a different take on it. I've had some conversations with customers where they want to see if they can apply or create specific policies for backing up databases and apply those servers or databases underneath the policy. As you know, a backup policy is at the database server level for Azure SQL database, and it's at the managed instance level for the managed instance. So we'll talk about the different options around primarily policies, and we'll also talk about, where the data is stored and point in time restores. So we'll do some demos and stuff. I remember I did this a year and a half ago, and I ran out of time. So we'll actually pretty much start in the demo area. Again, if you need to reach out, RSVP, hit us over meetup.com, NovaSQL, and then all the slides for this information are at aka.ms NovaSQL UG downloads, and we put all the slides up, and they're organized by year. So there's 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. I just dump them in the 2021 folder for this year. And if you need to see a recording of this meeting that we're having right now, or previous meetings from last year, or recordings from our conferences for last year, or for our conferences that we've got laid up for this year, go out to aka.ms at Azure Cloud Events. Hey guys, I'm gonna need to do this. Let me see. I'm gonna make sure you're muted. You can, if you need to chat, just come off chat, but otherwise I'm gonna have to mute you. I guess, can. Okay, good. So that's where our recordings are. Sorry about that. Again, our YouTube channel, Azure Cloud Events. Yeah, some of our events coming up. Again, in addition to the monthly webinars, and we've got also another couple of user groups. There's an artificial intelligence and machine learning meetup for mostly domestic users that live along the East Coast. But then my friend Prashant has a global artificial intelligence user group where he's pulling people from all over the world. So check those out. Those are good, and they do monthly virtual meetups. So I know last meeting I said, well, we're only going to have one virtual conference because I'm not getting tired. I'm worried about Tim burnout, right? I'm worried about Tim burnout. But Prashant said, well, we got a lot of momentum from last year. Let's keep going and have a second event. So TBA, we don't know when, because we've got to cross-reference it against any internal Microsoft events or any other national level events, because good speakers tend to go to those events. So we're going to take a look at July or August. We'll let you know in early May when the July or August event is, and then we'll do another event first half of November, and then we'll let you know, late August when that's going to be. But it'll be the same thing. It'll be virtual conferences, multiple tracks, things like that. But it'll probably be pared down time-wise. It'll probably be kind of a 10-to-3 situation with a keynote and then 4 sessions afterwards. I actually like or prefer doing the virtual sessions. One, you don't have to get a lot of sponsors or food or any of that. So it works out for me from a logistics perspective. The only time we had a problem was, I think we did an AI/ML session back in late July, and we made a mistake on how we recorded everything. Big old chunky streaks. Track 1 was a 5-hour video file, track 2, 5-hour video, so forth, and we couldn't really break it up the way we wanted to or edit it. So other than that, the virtual conference stuff has been pretty successful. So, hey, we're always looking for talent. I'm really serious about this. We're hiring cloud solution architects and sales specialists and customer engineers. Customer engineer is more deep, whereas the cloud solution architect is more broad, standing up customer POCs and leaving and maybe going to another customer, where a customer engineer is very deep on a certain smaller set of topics. Then sales specialist handles more of the actual sales role between the customer and Microsoft. If you need to hit me up on LinkedIn, I have not done a good job over the past 3 months of staying. I used to look at my LinkedIn every day, but I haven't. I'll start again. Then hit me up. My personal Twitter is SysFrameworks, and then my the user group Twitter is NovaSQL. Or hit me up over email if you see a job that you want to try for. send me your resume if you want, and then I can look internally to see who the hiring manager is and send the resume directly to our hiring manager. But you got to have experience because Microsoft is not unfortunately, we're not a big internship shop or, just starting out kind of shop. So you got to have some chops you have to be in the field, have been in the field for a while. Anyway, let's jump into Azure Purview. Any questions about any of the chapter news, any of that crap? So let's talk about Azure Purview, and it is a technology that is in preview. And there's two types of previews that we have. We have a private preview, which we work internally with a set of customers who are granted access to the previewed resources privately. We don't advertise it publicly. Then we have a public preview, which is people can sign up for it, and if resources are available, they're granted access to the resource. And during the public preview stage, we're looking for feedback. We're looking for customers to ask questions, to make suggestions, to break stuff and try out our demo environment or try out their own tenant resources. So what is Azure Purview? Do you remember Azure Data Cataloging, Azure Data Catalog? This is it. We had an internal project called Babylon, and that's what Purview is based on, Data Cataloging 2.0. And with, let me see, somebody saying something. With Babylon, and it's what it's turned into, Azure Purview. Can I put the session recording link URL in the chat box? The control of the meeting is covering up the URL. Sure, I can put the recording link. Also, the recording link is here. Like if you have to walk away from this meeting completely and you can't watch the rest of it, here's where the recording link is. NovaSQL, meetup.com NovaSQL, what we're about, and it's right here. All the presentation downloads, the YouTube channel, Twitter handle, and then some blah, blah, blah benefits. So yeah, I'll put the link back up. Put it in the chat. But it is also always on the Meetup site, just because I just got that question a lot. No problem, Michelle. Okay, so let's go back. So what is Azure Data Preview? It's an improved 2.0 version of Azure Data Catalog. I will say this, it is in public preview. So it's not as mature as some of these more mature data dictionary, data cataloging, current solutions from places like Calibra, Informatica, Google Data Catalog, and Elation. I mean, there's some data quality components on, I think, Informatica and Calibra or Elation that would just kind of clean the floor up with us. So we're in the public preview stage. We're taking customer feedback. If you don't have a data catalog solution, or if you have a homegrown data catalog solution and you're looking to get rid of that solution, this is a perfect place to start. And there is a data map, which is being able to reach out to your data sources to scan those data sources. And then there's data cataloging with glossary terms. And then there's insights, what data is where, what data is in each source I have. So take a look at Azure Purview if you have some kind of homegrown data dictionary, data catalog product. And if you don't have any at all, jump in the public preview, or if you're looking to change from your existing solution and you want to have some feedback, this is a good way to go. Oops. I do this once. I do this. So here's some marketing slides. So just help me suffer through these with me. But it's about data being your most strategic asset and how important data is. And just to say a common term, data is the new oil. It's what makes companies and organizations run. Data governance, depending on if you're in a compliance framework or if you have a voluntary move in your company to develop a governance framework, or like I said, if you're in a financial industry, or if you're healthcare industry, or if you're maybe the federal government or Defense Department, you absolutely have to have some type of data governance, um, with people asking, where is my data? Where did it come from? Can I trust the source? Or underneath the compliance bullet, what's my risk exposure? Am I generally compliant? How do I control access to this data? And then you might have a chief data officer. This is a high level, 1,000-foot level slide where the chief data officer might be asking these questions or expecting answers to these questions or in charge of a process to enforce something like this. So elements of successful data governance. Obviously, you want to manage your growing data landscape, and that includes data that's in your cloud, data that's in, data that might be in Azure, data that might be in other clouds, or data that might be on-prem, or data that might be in a private cloud. I know no IT presentation would be complete unless we use the term silo, but if you have data silos, it's a great way to break down the data silos by seeing what data is where, how did that data get there, and where is that data being transferred to. Also, the ability to be agile with your data. We know where the data is, we can leverage it for insight. And then if you've got regulations that you need to comply with, that's an excellent way to approach a data governance strategy, looking at the regulations and then building something that complies with the regulations. So again, reimagine data governance with Azure Purview. Azure Purview lets you take a look at how your data is really built in the cloud, on-prem, private cloud, other clouds. It sets a foundation for effective data governance, particularly if you've got a homegrown data governance solution or no solution. And then it maximizes data, and then it lets you garner insights from that. With reimagining the data governance in the cloud, you can look at operational, transactional, analytical data. You can look at cloud native and purpose-built services to address discovery and compliance needs. It's a fully managed serverless PaaS service, although I say PaaS service, but the documentation will say software as a service because there's no real hardware that you configure, but it's certainly customizable and all that to where it kind of fits in that PaaS service description, particularly when you start to get through things like the storage you have to set up and the Azure data factory pieces that you have to set up and credentials and things like that. But anyway, the overall intention is to help kind of get rid of if you got manual solutions for data governance or some type of ad hoc or homegrown solution, or you don't have any solution at all, Azure Purview is a great solution for you. I'll get through these marketing slides in a second. It establishes the foundation for effective data governance by helping to automate the discovery of that data by scanning data sources, classifying data, absolutely at scale through blob storage, data lake storage, Amazon S3 storage, IBM storage, SQL Server data. Right now there's about, I think there's like 10 different data sources just in the preview and in my demo that you'd be able to classify data against or scan data against. And you can take a look at data lineage. You can know where it came from and what was derived from it with the data lineage. But we'll see. You don't really click on a link that shows metadata about the data, but you're not going to be able to open up a spreadsheet that's salaries.csv. It's just information about that file and where that data came from and where that data is headed if it's onto another process. And then you'll be able to maximize business value of data. by letting users basically, if you've got a team that's doing some type of report building operation and they don't know anything about your organization, they can use the Azure Purview data or data from a data catalog, data dictionary to figure out what data is what fields are what the schema might be, and they're able to build reports around that. Oh, and another thing is there's the ability to curate a glossary. So if you've got an organizational glossary, consistent business terms across your organization that need to be enforced and used, business terms and definitions, that's a perfect way to leverage Azure Purview. And then the gain insights into data across the estate is important as well. My demo really just shows the storage sources, and then we can drill into the storage a little bit. Because we're still in public preview, the demo that I've been given doesn't go as deep, but I have a homegrown demo that I built that shows high level, some data sources and things like that, or the button for data sources, and then the provisioned demo that I was given doesn't have it. You'll see. Customer Spotlight. Now here's the three components for Azure Purview. So in terms of automating and grabbing all that managed metadata at scale, that's your data map. If you want to do discovery for data customers or consumers, that's our data catalog. And then data insights, helping us look at our data across our organization. So these three pieces are key for the Azure Purview, or critical for the Azure Purview architecture. Sorry, Prashant was helping out Michelle. So if you want to unify and make data meaningful, you use the Azure Purview map. Now here's a screenshot, and the screenshot is kind of what we're stuck with because I don't have this built in my own personal demo, and I don't have a sources button in my provision demo that I was given. But here is Here is my, excuse me. Here is a copy, here's a screenshot of the data map, the Purview data map, where you show lineage, identification of hybrid data stores, 100 plus built-in and custom data classifiers. And then if you've got any Microsoft information protection sensitivity labels, or if you've got labels from O365 and you're scanning a data source that's of Microsoft 365 or O365, it'll keep those labels in check for you. It'll port those over. So let's take a look at this. So this is some examples of some data sources. And we can look at this in my demo a little bit, but you'll see a better angle of it by looking at the screenshot. Collection, and then underneath collections, data sources, Teradata, Hive Metastore, SQL Server, Power BI, Blob Storage, Azure Data Lake Storage. Data catalog. You can help you search through your data, provides that business glossary, and then data lineage. And we'll look at that here in just a second, I promise. And then insights to where your data is living, file types, things like that, reports about assets, different types of scans against your data, reports against the glossary, classification, and any types of security labels. So again, Azure Purview helps make the most out of your investment because you might have data in all of these sources: Azure, Microsoft Power Platform, operational analytical data, 365, SQL Server, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and SaaS. And Purview centralizes the metadata and the schema about these different data sources and pulls it in and makes it a searchable, configurable repository of metadata. For example, it doesn't take a 30 gig database on SQL Server and pull that data in. No, it pulls in metadata about that data source and tells you that, oh, this is an employee classification and compensation database. Here are the table names that it found and the columns and the column types in the schema for the tables. Here are some of the features in public preview right now. Automated scanning of hybrid sources, classification, information protection, Atlas API support for the data catalog, semantic search and browse, business glossary, data lineage. It'll be able to connect to Synapse workspaces. I think they're working on that right now. For data insights, scan reports, glossary reports, classification labeling reports, and asset level drill down by sensitivity. So let me jump over real quick. Let me show you here. So here's a little bit more technical drill down on Azure Purview as an architecture. There's a unified experience, there's a unified tool to access it called Purview Studio. We'll jump out to that quickly. There's the piece with the data catalog with the capability around search, glossary, and then data insights, data use reports, and then the unified platform with the data map. And on top of, part of the data map is assets, lineage, and classifications. To feed that, there's a lot of automated scanning and classification, and that hits on-prem, multi-cloud, and then operational and analytic or SaaS data. It feeds out or connects to Power BI, as well as SQL Server on-prem. The Synapse piece, I don't have a connection to it today, but it's in preview-ish to be added to it. Azure Data Services and an M365 Compliance Center. Let's take a look at the demo here. So here's the key, here's the Azure portal. And I've created a demo Purview account. And part of that Purview account, you've got to give permissions for the resource to create some storage accounts and some other services in Azure. So it's not just home, new resource, Purview, and it does everything for you. So at least in preview, there's a couple of other little steps you'll have to step through, but it's fairly easy. I won't get into too much of it right now, but it's got the basic things along the left-hand side that you see in most Azure services. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump out into Azure Purview Studio, and that's where you get the data map, the data catalog, and data insights. So we'll jump out there real quick. For capacity units, that's really around the sizing of the capability to process data, but that's kind of beyond what we're talking about today. Oops, excuse me. So here is the Purview Studio from my demo Purview account. You get a home button, and that's got a knowledge center, the ability to register data sources, browse assets, manage your glossary. I don't have really anything set up. I think I've got one source that I've started to work on, and I scanned in some other assets from a thing called a starter kit that's on the Knowledge Center. It's a little bit more complicated than what it initially seemed to be, so I kind of pulled out and used the provision source. There is sources, data sources, and you create a new data source by going into new collection and picking a data source and all of that stuff. I don't have the sources tab on my provision. This is the one that Microsoft provides for demoing Azure Purview, so that's okay. We'll deal with that. There is the glossary area. You can create terms, manage term templates, edit glossary items. There's insights where you can see your assets. You can see the types of information about recent data scans. Again, you can see reports about the glossary, classification, sensitivity labels, and file extensions. And then there's a management center. And again, reason I'm showing you two different Azure Purview Studios is that my demo provisioned, my Microsoft provision might not have some of this stuff. You have account information. You have data sources. I don't have this one on my Microsoft provisioned one. Scan rule sets. If you've got a scan rule or a duration or a schedule that you set up for scanning, because you don't have to, or you can set up a schedule for scanning. So you can set up a schedule to scan SQL Server or Azure Data Lake or things like that. Integration runtimes. I don't have any. Oh yeah, I do have one integration runtime. The data that gets imported into the metadata that gets imported into Purview is a data factory driven process. Metrics, classifications, classification rules, data factory and data share. I believe for things like when we start to talk about lineage, where data came from, Power BI and Azure Data Share and Azure Data Factory are the only ones that show data lineage right now in preview. And, that's important because you're talking about what this is. It's data about data, like a data source phone book or an index of all your data. And then once you register a data source, you run these scans against your data source. But again, because of the demo piece and what I was provisioned, I can and can't see some things. All right. So here's the Azure Purview demo with a couple of things peeled away. I mean, there's not a data sources area for me to kind of show you, but you still get the same general feel. There's 500 or 5,338 assets, and that's documents. That's document metadata and 196 different glossary terms. If this was if I had administrative access, they'd also have the sources. But there's another way to look at sources. There's the Knowledge Center, and the Knowledge Center is kind of cool. There's a couple of videos on how to do this and a couple of tutorials on what is Azure Purview. You can also register and scan data, and that's where you get into this thing called a starter kit. And you can also build a business glossary, and that's kind of a handy tool. You can also, excuse me. You can also browse assets, and I've got assets in several different storage items, 10 for here, and then one custom source in Atlas Core, but I've got 9 items in Azure Blob Storage, 7 items in Azure Data Factory, an item in Data Lake Storage Gen 1, 22 items in Data Lake Storage Gen 2, and you can browse into these. And you don't really see, I clicked all the way through the file, but I don't see the data in the file. I see an overview of the information about the file, the type of file that it is. I get schema information about the file. There's no real lineage attached to this. Again, lineage only shows in Power BI, Azure Data Share, and ADF for right now, although there is a lineage. I'll show you one for AWS, so they might have improved it since the demo piece came up. And it shows you related files to this, and really it's related to itself. So you can browse assets here. Again, there's 196 glossary terms. One button that's missing here is the ability to create a new glossary term. And I can understand why they didn't put that out there, because you don't want somebody giving a demo and adding data sources or glossary terms willy-nilly. They want to kind of control this so that other people can come by and use this demo. But if you look at it, account number, it doesn't really have a parent term. And a parent term might have a whole hierarchy of where a data asset came from. There are associated assets with account number. You can go and click on other assets that have account number in them. So there's 8 out of these that might have the same thing. And then you can view insights. And we'll come back to this, but you can see where your data is, 9 source types, 5.5K discovered assets, 320 classified assets. And you can hover over it and you can see how many assets are in each of your sources. You can take a look at file-based sources. You can look at the size trend of file types, file type within source types for CSVs. So the last 30 days, all types, source types, and then the file type, CSV. You can also change that. Parquet, zip, DAT, TXT, RDS, you name it. Now you can take a look and open up like an Amazon S3, size trend of file type. So current data, 1.6K, change in data size. Not really a lot of changes, but just to show you some other aspects of this. You can look at top 5 paths of CS files within Amazon S3. You can get very specific. Like, where is this data going? So you can look at the user CSV file that's stored in an Amazon S3 bucket. You can see the properties. You can see the column names, basically. You can see the lineage, and the lineage is, the file, what's happening to it, and then where it's ultimately landing. Contact information if there were experts or owners of this data. And then any type of related information about the data, you can look at that as well. Is it feeding information for other files? Scans, if you wanted to look at information about recent scans, success, failures, canceled, and what a scan is, and I'll have to flip around, I'll flip between this. If you've got a data source and you scan against a data source, I'm going to flip back to my demo piece. If you scan against a data source, that means you're pulling in the metadata about that data source. It is telling you how many scans you've done, how many successful, how many have canceled, and how many are failed. And failure could be a couple of different reasons: bandwidth, contention, all that kind of good stuff. And then here are the names of scans and the type of data that you're pulling across for your scan. How many succeeded, how many have failed. Oh, see, 3 against the PBI scan. Scan duration, last scan run. So it can tell you some basic information about the scans themselves. So, and then Glossary. Again, what we don't have here is the new term and the managed term templates here. But with Glossary, you can, of course, look at the total number of items in your glossary, but you can also create new terms if you've got administrative access. Same thing with classification insights. If you are looking out and you want to say, overview of my data sources that have different types of classifications on them, it'll tell you which top sources with classified data in the past 30 days. It'll tell you the subscriptions and unique classifications found, sources classified, files classified, or tables classified, and then classification categories, personal, government, system, financial, miscellaneous. And you can click on the individual classified sources to kind of dig in. Excuse me. Dig in a little bit more. Under classification insights, top classifications for files, top classifications for tables, classification activity. And then you can look up what are the different sensitivity labels you have out there. None really in this preview environment. The difference between this preview environment and the one that here is that, you know, I could, oops, I was going to say I could create a new sensitivity label, but I can't. So sensitivity labels, you can get information about that. There aren't any. And then you can look up by file extension too. So what type of files am I storing? JAR, CSV, TXT, JSON, TSV, Parquet, SSV, and so forth. If you want to know what kind of file extensions are in the data that I have. And there's just a different way to look at it, sort of a tabular way, JAR, CSV, TXT, all the way down to, you know, PowerPoint, HTML, Avro, etc. So what if you want to get started on Azure Purview? Well, you can go out to docs, microsoft.com/, Azure Purview, or look at the Azure Purview overview. And I have that up here. You can go here and kind of learn about Purview. Well, by the way, Ignite is next week. Just as an aside. What is Azure Purview? Or you can go to the Azure Purview landing page for documentation. Look at what is Purview, what is the best practices, what are the best practices, what are some document catalog or data catalog permissions, supported data file types, how to scan non-Azure data sources, tutorials, download the starter kit if you want to kind of do a quick start. And if you've got a Microsoft account manager, hey, tell them that you're interested in the Azure Purview public preview, and you can get started. So guys, I think do we have any questions? No? Dazzled you that much? I think we're ready to wrap up. And yeah. So go out here, go take a look at Azure Purview. Remember, it's in public preview now, so we're taking in comments, we're taking in suggestions, feedback. Get with your Microsoft account team if you've got one, and they'll go ahead and get you set up with, oh, thanks, George. They'll go ahead and get you set up with Azure Purview, and off you can go. And you can have more impact, I think, by being part of a public preview customer base with, making suggestions on the GUI, the widgets, what you see. You can have an input on that. So, hey, I appreciate you for joining, and we will see you next month, March 26th, with Nicole. I see people who are customers who hear me talk a lot as well. So, anyway, you're welcome. Um, uh, sorry. So anyway, this recording will be up by the end of today, and you guys have a good weekend. Next month, Mike Ray, Azure Arc Enabled Data Services. I like Mike; he's a friend of mine. So he's dialing in at 8:30 in the morning Pacific time. So we want to give him a nice warm welcome. So thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you next month. Bye. I'm going to stop recording.